Time for another edition of Sharp or Square with our betting superhero, Chad Millman, CEO of the Action Network. All odds provided by FanDuel. Okay, I had a losing week, but it was a half a point within a winning week. Let's start with this. The betting public overreacts. Giants beat the Packers. Now everybody thinks the Giants are suddenly a great team. Ravens were -5, now -6. That's a dead number, as you told me last week, -5. The Ravens are the better team. The Ravens just faced the Bengals, and it looked ugly because it's a divisional foe, and Cincinnati's a pretty good team. -5, -6, the Ravens are going to go in. It's right back to reality for the Giants. By the way, Daniel Jones is a better road quarterback than a home quarterback. I take the Ravens to cover, sharp or square.
Did somebody send you my script before I came on? Because I'm flabbergasted at the thoughtfulness, at the strategy, at the reaction, at how you're reading the market, how you're thinking strategically about the numbers. You've said it all, Colin Cowherd.
Wow.
It's almost like you've graduated. The wise guys are all over the Ravens. Okay? It moved from 3.5 to 5.5, as you said, to 6. I think 6, the 6 is always the line of demarcation in betting, especially now because these coaches are all cuckoo, right? And you don't know if they're going to go for it. You don't know if they're going to go for the extra point, if they're going to go for the 2-point conversion. So you're right on the number. Play it up to 6. You're right on the side. Here's what's really interesting. 85% of this money is on the Ravens right now, but you're still seeing some tickets come in on the Giants because of everything you just said, that public perception. People are buying into the 4-1 Giants. What Lamar Jackson is really, really good at, in addition to growing so much over the past couple of years, understanding where he is on the field when he's running with the ball, he's great against the blitz. And the Giants defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, who obviously spent all those years with the Ravens, loves to blitz. So you've got a great quarterback against the blitz, a defensive coordinator who likes to blitz. You've got Ronnie Stanley on the offensive line, who was alternating series last week, coming back full strength. Take the Ravens, call it a day.
Here's another one. Mike Tomlin, Steelers +8.5 at home. I always believe after a team, especially a functional team, is humiliated, take them the following week. This is not at Buffalo. It's not 25-mile-an-hour winds. It's a Tampa team, frankly, that has sputtered with Todd Bowles offensively. Tampa wins the game. Greg Cosell told me today, Kenny Pickett was actually okay. They just have no running game. I'm taking the 8.5, sharp or square.
Honestly, where's Colin? Somebody find Colin and put him back on the goddamn podcast. This wasn't even, every week, like pull back the curtain a little bit. Your producers will send me the games that you're thinking about. This was not on the list, and this was on my list to convince you of, when at the end you will say to me, give me a game that I'm not thinking about. It is so gross. You got to take the Steelers. Every trend points to the Steelers. We have this database at Action Network, tracks millions of betting data points going back to 2003. A team in the Steelers spot, which is coming off a blowout loss. They're a big dog at home. They're getting less than 30% of the betting tickets, which is what the Steelers are getting. They cover 61% of the time in this spot. I don't like to give precedents where the data set and the sample size isn't very big. This is a few hundred games. We're not talking about like 10-0 on Thursday Night Football, right? So this is a classic fade the public spot. Nobody wants to do it. You just hold your nose. Professionals are doing just that. The numbers bounced around from 8.5 down to 8. And then every time it gets to 8, it goes back to 8.5. Pros like the Steelers. Well done, Colin.
Okay. Those are my two bets, my best bets.
Okay.
I would like to go Blazing 2, but it just doesn't have the impact of Blazing 5.
Terrific 2.
I've told you this for years. I've always got 3 bets I like. And then at the end, I called it Blazing 5. I was an idiot. I should have come out with Blazing 2. I'd never miss a game. So here's a game that's interesting. There are teams that sometimes have bad records that I really like. I think the Raiders are a real interesting 1-4 team. 4 close losses to decent clubs. Cincinnati's another one of those teams. I think Cincinnati, I take the first game out because of the surgery for Joe Burrow. No practice, no preseason. He, Stafford, and Brady were awful in week 1. Okay, so I start with them kind of the second half against the Dallas Cowboys. At that point, they've been competent. Now, they're not averaging much per play, but Jameis Winston has regressed badly. Taysom Hill can be fun, but in his career rarely has had big back-to-back rushing games. I don't think the Saints are very good. Cincinnati's in a fairly desperate spot now because Baltimore beat them. I'd swallow the 1.5, and I would take the Bengals sharp or square.
What happened to Colin? He was so sharp, and now he's so square. You've chosen one of the squarest plays on the board, and it's a game that every wise guy I've spoken to loves the Saints. You're still getting Bengals Super Bowl inflation. You're still getting Joe Burrow inflation, which has only gotten bigger since he became a member of the Volume family. This O-line is a mess, like truly a mess, and it's going up against a very good defensive line. And even though the Saints haven't gotten a ton of pressure, they also don't need to blitz. And Joe Burrow's passer rating is below average when he isn't blitzed. This is a very, very good matchup for the Saints. The line has moved in their direction. It was at 2. It went down to 1.5. The wise guys have this game lined as a pick, so they feel like they're getting a lot of value here.
Okay, I'm going to take the Cowboys now plus 6.5 at Philadelphia. 2 starters could be missing. The Eagles have yet to trail. They don't score in the second half. Cooper Rush doesn't throw interceptions. I don't know if they win, and I generally like to take the side of the team that's going to win. This number was a little tastier early. It's now 6.5. I have a completely disruptive defensive line that in every game they've played, Dallas has disrupted starting offensive lines. Now I got backups. I saw what they did with the Rams backups. I'm going to take the 6.5 and take Dallas here, sharp or square.
Well, the sharp side is the Eagles at 4.5, which is what I got, and 5, and 5.5, and even 6. The reason it got to 6.5 is because the wise guys have been betting it nonstop. I would still take the Eagles at 6.5. I have not gotten any feedback from professional bettors that they would still take this at 6.5. So I would imagine they might like the Cowboys here. But the Cowboys are not one of those teams that professional bettors generally like. And they are getting a huge benefit of doubt from the public in how this line opened, which is why the wise guys played it. Let's take the Cowboys only as an example right now, and then forget about the Eagles for a second. The Cowboys beat the Rams on a forced fumble return for a touchdown, a blocked punt that was followed up by a field goal, a 57-yard Tony Pollard touchdown run. In that game, they had fewer first downs, fewer yards per play, more penalties. They had a couple turnovers the couple fumbles they recovered themselves. They were outplayed by the Rams, who just aren't very good right now and have a terrible offensive line. The Cowboys also looked amazing and beat up on the Washington Commanders, terrible offensive line. Cincinnati Bengals, terrible offensive line. So we're all loving Cooper Rush. We're loving this defense, which is outstanding, but they're doing it against frauds. And so I like the Eagles because they're finally playing a team that has probably the best offensive line and an overall offense and a defense that can stack up against whatever the Cowboys are going to bring.
All right, if you look at the history of the league, when teams win by 25, 30 points one week, they don't cover the following week. Kansas City at home, getting 2.5 points, seems like the obvious play. I also believe it's a close game, and Kansas City's better than Buffalo last 3 years in close games. Chiefs plus the point, sharp or square.
So this is really interesting. Complete and total divide on this game. I think if you look at this number, you blindly look at this number and you see a really good team that is a short home underdog, you're automatically going to take it. And then, as you know, we do the Favorites podcast on the Volume Podcast Network. Me and my BFF, Simon Hunter, we got some calls from professional bettors who were talking about what we talked about on Tuesday. They like to call over the 48 hours so they can give us feedback so we can talk about it on the podcast on Thursday. They love the Bills. Loved the Bills. And it's a completely unconventional spot for professional bettors to like a team, which is a good team playing against a good team on the road, and that team on the road is favored. But I will tell you, there is some bubbling up conversation out there that the Chiefs aren't as good as their record shows, right? They could have easily lost a couple of these games that they won, the Chargers for one, last week against the Raiders for another. So the Bills are kind of a juggernaut right now and are built specifically to beat the Chiefs. So the sharp side, according to the sharp calls, is the Bills.
All right, sharper square. The most beat-up team in the league is San Francisco. They're on the road second straight week, and Atlanta gets plus 5.5. We know that San Francisco wrecks offenses, but they have now 5 different starters out. Atlanta is 37 big plays offensively this year, which is a weird number for a very, very average team. I would take the 5.5. I think the Niners win, but I'm just not laying that on the road, time away, all beat up, meaningless game, overconfident after wrecking Carolina. I'll take the point sharper square.
The Falcons are a really interesting team, and they have been a wise guy team all year long. They continue to be a wise guy team. This is a sharp side. It's really fascinating because if you look on Twitter, I bet if you ask Greg Cosell this, the people who are inside football look at the Falcons' offensive scheme and they love it. They think Arthur Smith has built a really sound, fundamental running game that can be interchangeable, right? Cordero Patterson has been out of the lineup, and they still did really well against the Bucs and almost won that game, if not for, at least had the opportunity, if not for that roughing the passer call. And so they have been leaning on their running game, which is helping them stay in the game. The biggest challenge for them in this game, I'm not saying the wise guys are walking away from the Falcons. The 49ers have a dominant rush defense. And so this will be the first real true test of how sophisticated Arthur Smith's running game can be, and can it play against the best in the league?
And finally, I think it's pretty interesting. The Seahawks are now getting 3, all odds provided by FanDuel. Arizona is a terrible early team, so Seattle will play with the lead. It's one of the loudest stadiums. Arizona plays great late. But there is no proof here, though I don't buy Geno Smith continuing this trend. Seattle has been, in all but one game, that against the healthier Niner team. They take leads. They're at home. They're getting a field goal. And to be honest, I get a veteran coach against a coach most wise guys don't even like. I think I take Seattle in the points here, sharp or square.
Totally sharp. This line makes no sense, Colin. Your read is 100% right. Seattle has the better coach. They have the better offensive line. They have the top-rated passing offense in the NFL. They have the most explosive passing offense in the NFL. The Cards defense is the second worst in defending explosive pass plays. This line opened at 3. It moved in Seattle's direction. You got a short home dog in the division. And I know it sounds crazy to say it right now. You have the better quarterback in Geno Smith. So
that's right.
Of course, the wise guys are on Seattle.
Okay, I'm going to ask you for one of your picks, and then I'm going to ask you for an opinion on a pick that I stay away from, but it's interesting. Chargers now, FanDuel minus 4.5. I would be prone to take the Chargers because I just don't think Denver's going to get this right. Just your opinion on that.
So my opinion was take the Broncos at 5.5. The reason why it's moved to 4.5, even though all of the tickets are coming in on the Chargers, is because wise guy money has come in on the Broncos. The wise guys are not sold on the Chargers at all. And the Chargers get sort of the public bounce because people love their roster. They love Justin Herbert. They love their receivers on the edges. But but this is not a roster that is ever able to put it together, and you really can't count on their coach. And so that's why the wise guys are fading the Chargers. It's a pass for me. I don't have a lot of faith in Russell Wilson, not because of the situation that he's in, but he did just have surgery. And like, we've seen quarterbacks who are playing in pain. It's not easy to do. So now I got a guy who hasn't been playing well and is playing in pain with an injury that I don't really have a good sense of how bad it is. So it's a pass for me. At 4.5, I'd probably still lean Broncos. I'd probably lean Broncos until this got down to 3, to be honest, just because it's a key number. It's a divisional matchup. It's similar principles to what we talked about with the Seahawks and the Cardinals strictly from a bet the number point of view.
Okay, finally, give me the pick you like I haven't discussed.
Can I interest you in the Miami Dolphins plus 3.5? I don't really. I know.
A third string quarterback. Ugh.
But you know what? He was not terrible on Sunday, coming in off the bench, cold, getting no snaps whatsoever during the week. And that game, until the Dolphins were basically out of defensive players going into the fourth quarter, they had a chance to go ahead in that game 20-19. And I do believe, having watched that game and was pretty heavily invested in the Dolphins, they had a real shot to win that game with Skylar Thompson until the wheels just fell off. It was too much, right? You get him a week of practice. You get him at home. You get a hook. So that means that the half point, so that go from 3 to 3.5. I'm getting a home underdog with a really good team, getting them where they've played really well against the best team in the NFL. We've seen what they can do. We've seen how hard it is for teams to win down there. I don't trust the Vikings. I don't trust Kirk Cousins. I have no faith in this team. So right now, 51% of the bets on the Vikings, 73% of the money is on the Dolphins. That tells you the wise guys are on the Dolphins.
Millman, very good work today. Hey, just for kicks and shits and giggles, Jets plus 7 against Green Bay.
Jets. That's the wise guy side. I got to tell you, I was shocked. I really had no opinion on it. And all I've been hearing all week, Jets, Jets. People are buying in. They're buying in.
I like their offensive pieces. They got some clever pieces.
People really like Breece Hall. They really like what they have in receivers. I heard 3 different people say to me today, Sauce Gardner could be a legit top 5 cover corner right now. So the Packers have not been able to put it together. And you've got a Jets team that is feeling pretty good. You've got a Robert Saleh defense that has always been able to shut down the Packers without having to blitz. And so when he was with the Niners, so I think from a numbers perspective and a matchup perspective, people like the Jets. What I would say about this one is you might want to keep an eye on it because, look, 7 is such a key number. There's a very good chance, I'm looking right now, you might be able to get it to 7.5. So I'd look around or at least wait until we get closer to see if you can get a 7.5.
Good seeing you, buddy.
Good to see you too, my friend. Great. Listen, you did great work today. You came out on fire today. Until you fell off the map with some of those really terrible ideas, you were.
Listen, my starting pitching is excellent. My bullpen sucks.
Yeah.
Once I go to the later innings, I'm out.
I was so proud of you. I'm like, he's been listening after all these years. And then you just make
That's what my wife says. That's what she says. God, I thought you were listening after all these years, and I disappoint her. I disappoint everybody, Millman.
Everybody, all the time. It's tragic. All right, I'll see you later.
Bye.